Hello everyone and welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. So I had one of my students ask me how to create the Wrangler from TF2, which is basically like a portable turret that you aim from the character's perspective. So I'm going to show you a little video on how to do that. Okay, so let's get started. First thing we need is to create a turret blueprint. So in your content browser at the bottom, if you could right click and go to blueprint class, and we're just going to create an actor blueprint, and I'm going to call this I'm just going to call it turret underscore BP, and then open up that blueprint. So in here we need to obviously create our actual turret itself. So for this tutorial I'm just going to use a couple of blocks and things just to make out a rough shape of a turret. So I'm going to get a static mesh. I'm going to choose the 1 meter cube, and I am going to, let's make this into more of like a post, and then also stand it a bit more on the grid like that. And I'm going to create another one, so add component cube, and this one is parented to the original, which is fine. However, I do need to sort the scale out now. One thing to bear in mind in Unreal is usually the x-axis, like forwards in the x-axis, is normally the way, like forwards, if anything is has got like a particular direction. So this way, looking out this way, should be forwards. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I scale this to fit, to make it look like the turret is basically aiming that way to begin with. Okay. So it's not going to be a very nice looking turret, but it will do for what we need. So I'm going to also add in a cylinder just to make a barrel. Now, because it's parented, this cylinder is kind of copying the scale of the box, so which is why it's a bit oval shaped. I'm just going to rotate it, and then I'm going to scale it to be more like a barrel. Okay, there we are. Let's say that's our turret. We do also need a location for a bullet to spawn from. So we need to put something here to reference where a bullet should spawn. So to do that, I'm just going to add in a sphere. You use a sphere collision. So look for sphere collision and add that in. I'm going to stick it just past the end of the barrel like that. Okay, and that is also, need to make sure that is also parented. So it should be like a chain. So this, I'm going to rename static mesh here. I'm going to rename that to turret base. I'm going to rename this one to turret body. And then I'm going to rename the last one to barrel. Oops, or turret barrel. Okay. And see, the last one I could call that bullet spawn loc for location. Okay, so we've got these components now, and what we need to do is obviously set this up so that it will look at wherever the player is looking when the turret is active. So we are going to need to do some stuff in the event graph shortly, but let's just do a little bit of setup in the first person character first as well. So if you go to your first person character blueprint, I will open mine up from scratch as well, just to show you where to find it again. So in first person example map, so your main Unreal editor, make sure you're in content, first person BP, and then blueprints. And in there you'll find this one here, first person character. So you can double click on that to open it. Alternatively, you can also select the first person character here in the level, and then over on the side here you click on edit first person character, and it will open it up as well. Okay, so we don't need to do much in here. We literally just need a variable, which I've got active there. I need to remove that and put that back in for you. So yeah, we need a Boolean variable that basically just checks whether we've got the turret active or whether we've got the player's gun active. So what I'm going to do is just get input action fire and move this out a bit. So we're going to need to put a little bit of code here. But yeah, we do need a new variable. So click on add variable and call it turret active. Okay. And whenever we use the fire button, we're going to check to make sure if turret is active or not. Because what we don't, in this case, what I don't want to be able to do is I don't want the player to be able to fire their handheld weapon whilst they're using the turret. So I'm going to just put in a branch here. So drag in turret active and do a get, and then do a branch off that. And then connect that up. And then from false, plug this into there, into montage play. Okay. You could also plug it into that little reroute node there if you want. But either way, we only want to be able to fire the gun, the player's gun, when the turret is not active. So when that's false. Okay. And then we just need a little function to be able to actually turn the turret on and off. So all I'm going to do for this, in this example, is I'm just going to use the input key of 1. Okay, and also 2. And then I'm going to say get turret active and choose the set turret active and connect pressed into that one. That true. Duplicate that node with Control W. Connect that up and untick the box on that one. So when we press 1, it will activate the turret and say that we're using that. When we press 2, it will disable the turret so that you can use the gun again. Okay. Right, so now just click on compile, just make sure that's all fine. And that should be all we need to do in the character blueprint. So you should be able to just save and close that. Okay, so now back into your turret blueprint. This is where we need to do most of the setup. So first of all, we need the player. We don't need that overlap. Let's get rid of that one. We are going to use a begin play and event tick, so we'll keep both of these. Off of the begin play, first of all, we're going to need to make sure that the turret is going to receive input from the player. So if we do a get player controller, do a get player controller and then do enable input, and okay, this is actually plugged into the wrong one. We need to plug this into player controller. So what you can do to move a wire from one to another, if you hold the control key and then like left click and drag, it actually like unplugs, and then you can just drag and plug it into that one. So that's holding control. You can do that. Okay, so now we've got an enable input. So when the turret exists in the world, it's going to start looking for input from the player. That's what we need there. Okay, we also need it to be checking if the turret is active or not. So off of event tick here, we need to, oh, actually that's the other thing we need to do first actually. On begin play, drag off of here and do a cast to first person character. And off of the object input, we're going to do a get player pawn. Okay, so casting to first person character, and the reason we're casting to the first person character is for 2 reasons. One is so that we can check to see what the variable state of if the turret is active or not. You know, that Boolean variable that we just set up. We're going to check the state of that, but also we need to reference this quite a bit. So what I want to do is create a variable here. So if I right click on as first person character and choose promote to variable, it'll give us this node here, and you'll see it's created a new variable down here, and we're going to rename this just to player. Okay, and the reason I've done that is so that we don't have to keep making cast2 nodes everywhere in here, because we need to reference some information from the player blueprint quite a lot. So it just saves us having to constantly do a cast2 first person character node. It's a bit quicker. Okay. Right, so off of the event tick, what we need to do is check whether the turret is active or not. So if we drag off of here and do branch, and then if we get player, drag that in, and we should be able to get turret active. There it is. So get turret active. And then plug that into the condition there. Okay. So if the turret is active, we want it to start looking at wherever the player's looking. So we need to do that. We're going to need to use a line trace. You may have heard of this as referred to as a ray trace before as well. It's basically the same thing. So if I drag off of true here, because if the turret is active, we want it to do this. And I'm going to do line trace by channel. Okay, and this gives us this node here with several different inputs on. And we need to give it some information so that it can do this sort of line trace. So essentially a line trace, it will fire this little line from wherever we tell it to start to wherever we tell it to end. And if it hits anything, we can get the values of that, like the location, for example. So when we get the location, we can then tell the turret to rotate itself toward that location. So yeah, what we need to do now then is get the player. And we need to get the world location of the camera. So if you do get world location and then find first person camera in brackets there, click on that one. So we have this. So get the world location of the first person camera, and that'll go into the start of the line trace. Okay, let's just tidy that up a bit. All right, and then we also need. So this is just, so the line is going to start where the player camera is, which is fine. But we also need to determine where the end point is going to be. So to do that, first of all, we need to see which way the camera is looking. So we're going to use a get forward vector node. So do get forward vector. And then we are going to, so that's going to get the kind of the direction that the player's camera is looking in. But we also need to have a distance for the line to be able to travel. So off of this, if we drag off and do a multiply, so if you start typing multiply, you'll see you get vector multiplied by float or integer or vector. We're going to do a vector multiplied by a float. And then in this box here, this value determines how long the line will be coming from the camera. Okay, so if I do like 100 in here, for example, that means it's going to shoot a line from the middle of the player's camera, and it's going to shoot it 1 meter, basically, because Unreal units are basically centimeters. So 100 is 100 centimeters, therefore a meter. So that's not really going to be long enough. We want to make sure that the player can aim the turret from a good distance. So I'm going to put in something like 5,000 just to be safe. Okay. So we got that. So that's going to determine how long the line is. Then we're going to go up here and we need to do a add. So do a vector add vector. And then we're going to get the world location and plug that into there. So these two added together and then plug that into the end. And that will now determine that the line is going to start where the player's camera is. And then it's going to end 5,000 units away in whatever direction the camera is looking. So that should give us what we want. Okay. And now we need to then determine if it's hit something. We need to then get it to obviously rotate the turret. So first thing I need to do here is right click on out hit and promote that to a split the struct pin. Don't promote it to a variable. Split struct pin. Okay, and you'll see that now breaks it down into loads of different things. This just gives us all the stuff that this line trace can give us right here. But first of all, we need to check if it's actually made a hit. So return value, we do a branch. And that just means that it will check to see if it's actually managed to hit with anything. And if it has, then we'll get it to do some more things. So if it has hit, what we're going to want to do is rotate the turret body. So if you get turret body from here, and we are going to set the relative rotation. No, sorry, set the world rotation. So set world rotation there. Okay, so I'm going to set the world rotation there, connect that up. And then what we need to do is we need a find look at rotation. That gives us this little node here, which we can plug the return value in. But you can see here it's got a start and it's got a target. So it needs to know the start is basically going to be the turret body itself. So if we get turret body, drag that in, do a quick get world location. Spread this out a bit more. So do a get world location into the start. And then the target is going to be the hit location from the line trace. Like that. Okay. So let's just go back across that for a second. So every tick is going to check if the turret is active. If it is active, it's going to perform a line trace from the player's camera, 5,000 units in a straight line. And wherever that then hits, it's going to turn and rotate the camera's body to face that location. Okay. So let's see if that's worked. So let's just compile and save the blueprint. And we're going to go back into the level editor. And we need to make sure we put a copy of the turret into the world. So I'm just going to drag a turret in and plonk it down there. And then I'm going to hit play. And at the minute, the turret is not moving at all, which is what we expect. Now, if I press 1 on the keyboard, there we go. Now the turret is turning to look at wherever I look, which is what we wanted. Okay. However, at the minute, it doesn't shoot anything. So, and also that little branch checker that we did in the player character is working because I'm trying to fire the gun at the minute and it's not working. If I press 2 to disable the turret, you see now the turret is not following me and I should still be able to fire. Yes, I can. Okay. So let's come back out, go back into the turret blueprint, and we are then going to set up the firing mechanic. Okay. So we've already got it setting up input and getting the reference to the player there. It's doing an event tick to rotate the camera, but now we also need to add in firing. So if you search for fire, it should be there already in existence if you're using the first person example map. So this is the fire button. Now there's one thing that we need to do here, which is we need to make sure that consume input up here is unticked. Okay, because if this is ticked, this fire button in this code here will override the fire button code in the player's blueprint, so the player won't be able to fire the gun at all. So just make sure consume input is unticked. Okay, and that will stop it from overriding. So what we need to do is input action fire, and then again we need to just do, first of all, we need a quick check to make sure that it's not we need to make sure the turret is active. We don't want you to be able to fire the turret if you're not actually controlling it. So again, if we can just use this reference up here. Look, if we drag this one and do another branch here and connect pressed into the branch, and then if this is true, we then want it to spawn actor from class, and that actor is going to be we'll just use the first person projectile. So I'm just going to search for projectile. There it is. So you're going to use the first person projectile, but we also need to tell it where to spawn from using the spawn transform here. You remember earlier on we created that sphere called bullet spawn loc. That's what we're going to use as our location. So I'm going to drag this into the blueprint, and off of there I'm going to do a get world transform. Okay, and then I'm going to just connect this up into there and see what result we get. So I'm going to compile, save, and then play. So now if I press 1, I'm controlling the turret, and if I fire, okay, so it is firing, as you can see. However, it appears to be firing them kind of straight up for some reason. So let's sort that out. So go back to the turret BP. I think what we should do instead is I'm going to disconnect this wire. So that's holding the Alt key and then left clicking. I'm going to right click on return value and split the struct pin. And I'm going to do the same on the spawn transform here. So right click spawn transform and split the struct pin. We really only want to use the location and then possibly the rotation. First of all, let's just check, see how that works. So 1. Okay, see, they're at least spawning at their usual size now. However, they are still going up. So that is something we need to have a look at. So let's take a look at the sphere in here. And you can see its rotation values are all at 0, which seems fine. So let's try rotating 90 degrees that way. There we go, I think. Got a bit of an odd collision there, but yeah, there we are. Does seem to be the odd one that keeps sort of bouncing backwards from certain angles. I'm guessing that's just hitting the floor really quickly. We could also just turn off some of the collisions on like the barrel and stuff like that. So I'm going to select the barrel in the turret blueprint. I'm going to scroll down and just set that to no collision. There's not really much point in having that little bit. Doesn't really need a collision. So see if that's improved. Helps if I turn the turret on. I don't think that's quite spawning from the right place, you know, looking at that. It's not, is it? That's spawning from, that seems to be spawning more from sort of here, like in the middle of the turret for some reason. So let's have a look. Let's detach the rotation for a moment. Try that. It's a bit better, but they are now pretty much all going in the same direction. So we do need the rotation value there. Let's try putting it that way. Yeah, that's working much better. Of course, the only problem with this method is if you have any open sky, look, as I start to go up. As soon as I look above, and now it's now not following me until I bring my mouse back onto where there's a solid wall. So that's the only issue with that one there, but if your gameplay is all set indoors and things, you won't really have that problem. But that's it, really. The only thing that we could do on top of that is just add a little sound effect as well. So back in the turret blueprint, after you spawn the active first-person projectile, you just need to do a play sound at location. And then we're going to choose the first-person template weapon fire 02. And then the location will just be the same one as the sphere spawn location. So we can just drag that across to there. And then if you want this to look a little bit neater, you can double click on a wire to add in these little nodes that reroute the wire. So there we go. And that's basically it. I'll just briefly go over it again. So begin play. You're going to enable input with the player controller. You're going to then cast a first-person character and then set this player variable. And then on event tick, you're checking if the turret is active or not. If it is, you're going to do a line trace to see where the player's looking, and then rotate the camera towards, the turret towards that location. And then when you fire, it's going to again just check to make sure turret is active. If the turret is active, it's going to fire the projectile and then play a sound effect. Let's just do one last test. So I'm firing the gun first. That still works. Now if I activate the turret, that still works. Okay, and then if I press 2, I'm now back to firing the gun again, and the turret is stopped. So there you have it. So that's how you would create a mechanic similar to the Wrangler from Team Fortress 2. I hope this helped, and thank you very much for watching.